Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this press conference of the European Union. I have for you today, representing the Czech presidency of the Council of the European Union, Ladislav Miko, as well as European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevičius. We will start with short introductory remarks, after which we will take your questions. Ladislav, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Let me to shortly summarize our view where we are. I believe we are in the midway through the conference and in the final stretch of it. I believe we made good progress in the first week. We are now discussing the most political issues, but we have a good basis. Especially, I have to highlight that we have the progress in both protocols, where we basically done 2/3 of the job, and it is really looking to be concluded soon. I believe that also we mark a significant progress on this DCA, and we are now in the phase of the ministerial discussion. European Union ministers are now on site, and they bring a mandate to get a deal. We need a Paris moment for biodiversity. What is the situation now is, as I mentioned several times already, we are here truly negotiating our future here. This is why we need an effective deal, one that will really make a difference to nature and all the people who depend on it effectively. So, I mean, something what will deliver. We are hearing from all EU member states in the high-level segment about their commitment and all the action on the ground, including the European Union and the member states being the biggest donor of international financing. European Union is here also to listen, to engage, and to conclude a deal. We count on all our partner countries to fully engage on those shared goals. So I hope we can make this week count. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much all for being here. I just arrived yesterday and had a very intensive 24 hours already. One of my first meetings was with the Chinese presidency. They will have crucial role to play, and we are ready to work with them very closely. They have a hard job bridging between countries, and we will do our part in helping them out. I have also started meeting some of the ministers with who I have been in touch over the last year to really prepare the COP, particularly from the High Ambition Group. I'm impressed with the work of our negotiators and with the close cooperation with all the member states. Our work has already led to excellent development. Just now, the EU and a number of member states have agreed in committing jointly increase biodiversity finance, and this is part of the joint donor statement with several countries from around the world. So it includes a list of pledges by donors inviting other parties to contribute. In it, the Commission is confirming unprecedented doubling of EU's international biodiversity financing to 7 billion euros. Several EU member states are also doubling their financial support, such as Germany, France, and Spain, and the Netherlands is increasing by 25%. So I'm very thankful to them. With this step, we are confirming our investment in nature and in our future. Financial support must also be matched by real ambition, because it's ambition that will lead us to successful final results. So at this COP, we are negotiating 3 key interrelated issues: goals and targets, where we need ambition and clarity, a framework to measure and report progress, and finally resource mobilization and DSI. And all 3, they needed to deliver an adequate deal. So I'd like to dwell for a moment more on resource mobilization, because this is extremely important and even emotional topic. We saw this in negotiating rooms on the technical level the day before yesterday. So stakes are high for all. let me be very clear. The call for increased financial resources needed to respond to the biodiversity challenge is legitimate. That call should be heeded. So the real question is, how big is the gap and how to get there? And for that, we need to sit together at the table and negotiate. The EU and its member states are ready to do their share. We have delivered before. We will deliver now. And so should others, other contributors, philanthropists, multilateral development banks, private sector, and every party through its domestic finance. And let me close with a key thought for the coming days. Progress on ambition should be matched by progress on finance. Both sides has to go 100% on it. So high ambition on targets and increased, more effective funding are the two sides of the same coin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be able to take a few questions. Please be concise in your questions because we don't have very much time. And maybe we'll start with the gentleman there. Please go ahead. Yes, you.
Thank you very much. I'm a reporter from the paper China. And regarding of the issue of the mobilizing resources, and you just mentioned EU is ready to deliver now. I'm wondering what do you mean by saying that? And you also mentioned China play a crucial role in these negotiations. Could you interpret it us more about that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So, as I just announced, EU puts 7 billion euros on the table for the period of 2021-2027 for biodiversity, especially in the most vulnerable countries. We already actually implementing concrete projects like Natur Africa project on the ground, which I think is a sort of the best possible way of bridging that gap and ensuring that there is a trust in the room. And China's presidency, of course, will have to play a crucial role. We count on China's leadership as bridging that gap between the ambition and the resource mobilization, finding the ways to approach both sides, keeping them in the negotiating room, and ensuring that we both or everyone in that room realizes the level of ambition that's needed to implement, but also the tools that are crucial for that implementation. So far, I think we were fairly advancing well. There is still a major push that needs to be done, but I think I am optimistic for the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much. We'll try to ensure some gender balance, so we'll go to exactly you now, following which Patrick. Yes, you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Daisy Dunn from Carbon Brief. Can you confirm or deny the reports that Emmanuel Macron has described the new Global Biodiversity Fund as a red line in a letter to the European Commission? Thank you.
No, I can't confirm because I didn't see that letter. I only saw tweets and I hear it now from you, but I cannot confirm that. But I think, what's very important is not to concentrate on new funds, which, the old problems are not going to be gone with them. We have to look at the innovative mechanisms which can help African countries, Latin American countries, countries in Southeast Asia to have accessibility to funds sooner than they have now. So I think what's very clear, and this is what I have the feeling from my bilaterals with the counterparts from the Global South, faster implementation of the projects on the ground. Because, the people waiting for the solutions, climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, they cannot wait for 3 years for the project to be implemented. The project needs to be implemented now. So I think we need to look at more effective mechanisms, more innovative mechanisms, and of course for enhanced amount, larger amount, which then can be distributed.
Thank you very much. As promised, we're going to Patrick. Who? Right here. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Patrick Greenfield, Guardian newspaper. I wanted to ask you about the about trust. The developed world has not made good on its climate commitments, and we've just heard the EU and others re-announce existing funding commitments with a little bit of more money, but not much. Why should the developing world trust the EU, trust donors, given that it has failed, or the global north has failed on its climate commitments?
So first of all, let's not forget that this is a second meeting. We had a first part of Kunming, which was more online, and this is the second. So the funds that are announced, this is, I think, a large sums, which, as I said, they already being deployed on the ground, because the framework which we are talking is a 2020 framework. We are 2 years behind the implementation gap. And I think what's extremely important when we talk about the funding is exactly not to talk about unrealistic amounts, which usually then they gets the trust outside of the room. If we want to keep the trust, we have to also speak about what's realistic to deliver, and then to ensure that it's delivered. So ambition has to match the resources.
Thank you very much. We'll maybe go to the left side of the room. Please go ahead.
Hi, Natasha Gilbert from Nature News. The 7 billion that you mentioned, is that new money, or is it the same money that was previously announced? And are you saying that that 7 billion is not going to be in a new fund? And if not, what kind of new mechanism is it going to be distributed through? Thank you.
So 7 billion is the EU funds that going to be spent in the period of 2021-2027. So this is EU budgeting, which we announced and we doubled, and we doubling it again. So as regards our commitments on biodiversity spending, we have delivered and we doubling that. Now, what's extremely important is that there is no new fund. And to negotiate a new fund, it took us 7-8 years to negotiate GEF. So those talks about the new fund, I think they only misleading. They're not delivering any value so far. And the implementation of the framework can be only postponed, rather than ensuring that the funds that are now on the table would be effectively spent. How best new mechanism could be working? Yesterday we had a short presentation by Jeff, how they see the possible reform or possible changes. Today, I think it was also presented to the African group. I think this is extremely important, that we all sit by the table and we very honestly speak of what's not working and what can be improved. How best to access the funds. So the Global South, their opinion here is extremely important, rather than speaking about the new fund and then not having a implementation on the ground for a number of years. Because to negotiate the new fund, that would take a really number of years.
Thank you very much. We've got time for about 3 questions, so I'm afraid I probably won't be able to take all of them. But gentlemen here, if you've been waiting for a while, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Thomas Krumlacker, Süddeutsche Zeitung. I want to follow up on the previous question. So the 7 billion is not new money, it is a confirmation of earlier commitments. And today there were pledges, new pledges. Can you please elaborate which pledges are actually fresh money and how much does it amount to? And a brief second question to the fund. If it is such an ineffective idea to create new funds, what is your reading behind the insistence of the developing countries to create it? Thank you.
So I'll start with the second part, because it's easier. From my encounters with developing countries, as I said, the biggest need is effectiveness of implementation, of accessing to funding, but not creation of a new fund. So first of all, what they clearly say that they need a faster access to funding, a faster procedures, that they are too bureaucratic, that they are too long. For example, today I was discussing with minister from Rwanda, and she says 3 years. 3 years it took us from the application to the beginning of the project to be implemented, and that's too long. So this is what are the needs. So again, on the 7 billion, I feel that being the biggest funder of the biodiversity, we now kind of becoming apologetic about this large number which we have put on the table for the period of 2021-2027 within our budget. Now, what are the new or fresh today? Member states and countries like Japan, Canada announced their funding for biodiversity from mainly ODA. So there were different announcements. We're not speaking about the aggregated number yet, because we hope and we called for others to join. I think it was very fair move today to begin with naming the countries and how much each of them have put additionally on the table. Maybe at some point we will have an aggregated number, but at this moment we did not announce the aggregated number.
Very shortly, just to add about why there is a demand for fund. I think the ability to get money in time, which means accessibility, is one reason. The second is also the capacity which is missing in the countries which have to implement it. And this is also an element which is discussed here, and where we are really open to build the capacity in order to improve that.
I think we have time for approximately one very short question, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Daniela Chiaretti from Brazil, Valor Econômico. I have two quick questions. One is about the co-chair test that has an approachment that at the beginning you could use the GEF and then create a new fund to wait for 7 years or the 6 or the whatever. I would like a comment on that. And the second thing is about today the new government of Brazil has a new statement where they say that where they push the developing world on Article 20 and 21 of the convention, and they also support their team here, and they are saying that the proposals on finance of the developing world are not being considered. So if you can comment on that, thank you.
So if I understood correctly the first question, on Jeff, as I said, I think Jeff should be used as a main tool, and under Jeff we can have a mechanisms that could be created or improved. And I think Jeff, as I said, they are probably the best to speak. They have presented a possible reforms or a possible changes which they could implement, and then with the procedural changes which could have a significant improvement of funds being deployed. Now, on the call for again going further, I think we hear the call very well, and we appreciate those calls on bigger ambition as regards the funding. We also have a very clear call on bigger ambition as regards the implementation, and ensuring that the ambition of funding would match the ambition of the goals and review mechanisms. There is no better way than actually sit at the table and talk, negotiate, find that middle ground where we can meet, ensure that we have a clear plan, because we're speaking about the goals to be implemented by 2030. So we need to know also where we're going to be with the funding in the upcoming period to 2025 and at the later stages. as I said, we appreciate the effort, we appreciate the work of developing countries, especially of those who are trying to facilitate the agreement, who are trying to put on the table ideas of how this implementation and funding mechanisms could be working. I think these all ideas, they are worth attention and worth exploring. Yes, we are short on time, but I'm sure we all driven by the same idea that we want to implement the global biodiversity framework. For that, we need a sufficient funding, and I think there is no disagreement on that.
Short addition, again, I mean, indeed, if you want to call it two-step approach, one is to mobilize money immediately, and this is exactly the process described by Commissioner. And also, as he mentioned, we have to work on the factoring in the coming other sources, which maybe, let's mention the discussion on the SI, which is here ongoing. That may be one of the potential sources. There are many other sources and donors which should be factored in. And as we already indicated, this is for discussion about which initiative will encompass all this together in order to dramatically increase the overall amount.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid our time is up. So thank you very much to our speakers, and thank you for your questions. But please do not be worried. If you have further questions to the European Union, please do not hesitate to approach me, and I will try to serve your needs as required. Thank you.